DJ and PK, we are joined now by Utah State football coach Bronco Mendenhall. Coach, good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well because it's game week finally. We've been talking all summer. Let's get a game. And the thing is, it's hard to talk about your game because you have locked up your team and you got a bunch of new guys, and we don't know that much about UTEP. This game seems like a mystery on top of a mystery. How much do you know about UTEP, and how much are they a mystery to you?
So the advantage of the position we're in is UTEP has the same head coach as the year ago. They have a new defensive coordinator, but offensive identity is very similar. But in the world of the transfer portal, man, lots of changes happen on each roster each year, especially at the group of 5, group of 6 level. And so while leadership is the same on one side of the ball and personnel is similar on one side of the ball, that their defensive staff is different, as well as more of their personnel on that side, as well as it's game one. And so there's always unknowns, but it's fairly typical.
You started this journey into being a head coach about 20 years ago. I was a young beat writer back then. Both of us were young kids, Bronco. Now we're seasoned veterans. And the one thing I remember, you did a marvelous job, being there, and to see what you did to turn it around is as fine a coaching job as I've experienced over the years. And 2-3 years into it, you would joke that, oh my gosh, I had no clue what I was doing that first year. And you'd laugh about it. I remember you saying it in the football offices and talking about it. Well, now 20 years later, the one thing that you've become an expert on is rebuilding programs. The track record speaks for itself. There's no doubt about it. And now you have another job to rebuild. It's probably one of the reasons why you took it, is because it's similar to what you did the other places. I'm wondering, what is your formula when it comes to rebuilding a program?
Man, it's a really good question. Just first to acknowledge, I had no idea when I started at BYU. I mean, zero. And I look back, I don't know how we won any games just for the lack of what I knew. I was the defensive coordinator, and many times I acted only like that as the head coach for a while, and just kind of learned as I went. And I think the team kind of won in spite of me for a while. And anyway, the challenge to go to Virginia was just life-changing, and for a program that had struggled. And then to be captivated by the growth in not only individuals but the team. And I think I'll go back just for a second. My wife and I at BYU, after about year 10, we were just reminiscing one day, and it's like talking about our experience there. And almost all of our most profound memories were at the beginning when Wyoming turns it over 5 times in the rain, and we qualify for postseason the first year in that locker room. You would have thought we won the national championship in the first year at BYU. But the transformations are really what captivated us. So to your point about being here, I love and I'm drawn to really hard things, but the transformational process. And so in terms of the secret or the approach, I don't claim to be the only one or that I'm doing it perfectly, but the expectations really drive everything. And there's been really cool research that people crave and aspire to whatever labels and expectations that the leader gives them. And they really want to reach those. And so the worst thing any of us can do with our families or organizations or in whatever other things we're engaged in is to not ask enough, to not think we're capable enough to stop short. And man, it's uncomfortable because it requires stretching and growing, reaching, but really the cultural part of self-belief and organizational belief really transcends and is foundational before you even start executing whatever your plan is. And with those expectations, the people self-select. Many are drawn to that approach. Some don't want that approach, but that really then aligns the people with the purpose. And then you can define how you're actually going to play the game or do the job or do business or et cetera. So just in a pretty simple formula, that's what I would say.
I've heard plenty of coaches talk about how they'll take a little downtime in the off season and kind of self-scout and reflect, okay, we lost here. Why did we lose? What went wrong? What could we have done? And, when things slow down, and I know when you're taking over a new program, you're really drinking out of the fire hose. I don't know if you have time, but you've ultimately succeeded everywhere you've been, but there's also been a lot of initial pain and losing everywhere. And I don't know if there's any way to speed that up. Maybe you just have to go through it. But at BYU, the first year you start 1-3, then you get it rolling. At Virginia, you start 0-3, you won a couple, and then finish 2-10. New Mexico, you started 0-4, and then you got to 5-7. So should Aggie fans brace for pain in this month of September, or because this is your fourth head coaching job, have you learned things and everything you just talked about with PK about the self-selecting and people who hear the goal and migrate to it and really buy in? Can you do that faster?
Man, it sure is the hope. And I would love to say that I have a master template for how fast. In reality, most of the teams have made it to postseason their first year or no later than the second year, and then just remain there for the duration. And the winning percentage ended up catching up and surpassing maybe what any expectations were there. In terms of the initial 1, 2, 3, 4 games, wow, there's so much discovery going on, so much application, especially for a coach that focuses so much on the culture first. And as I mentioned, the execution eventually catches up. I just don't skip steps on the foundational part, which is how we're going to do it, not what we're going to do, but how we're going to do it. And sometimes, to your point, that has come at the expense of how precise maybe we play the game to begin with. That doesn't mean we're intentionally trying to slow that down. I'm also thinking about a program of sustainability. And I know that seems weird, and especially in today's world of immediate results and possibly one-year rosters. And so I would just as soon be 4-0 to start rather than 0-4. I'd just as soon be 3-1 and want that and are working to that and don't concede that. I also try to keep it in perspective as much as possible, and that's really difficult. But I do the best I can.
We had an opportunity to be around Bryson Barnes when he was at Utah. We know his story, Delta and all that stuff, and a farm guy. And we know your story. You're a ranch guy, farm guy yourself. It seems like the two of you would be an excellent match, and that he has an opportunity to be the leader as far as the players go. Obviously, the position requires it, but he's that kind of guy that people are drawn to him. What do you think about my assessment of his being able to be a leader and maybe amplify what you're trying to accomplish and get the best out of his players on offense?
Yeah, I think you've assessed it right on. Wow, am I fortunate because, excuse me, as we know from a book called The Captain's Class, a guy named Sam Walker wrote it. It was the impact of captains versus coaches on the best sports teams in the history of sport. And what they found is that the influence of a captain or a leader actually surpasses the influence of a coach. And as a coach, when you inherit or begin a journey, the right player leaders can really, to what we were just talking about, can really accelerate not only the culture but the result because of how fast the alignment happens. And there's just not a better person that fits myself, that fits this community and what we're working to build, and the identity of this program in this place in Cache Valley and at Utah State. I think I've hit the jackpot in terms of having the leader at the player level and the position he plays in terms of influence and impact. And that's really helped the momentum we've generated so far.
Made a little news a week ago when we heard about Ike Larson being suspended on a short-term suspension. Has short-term been defined?
No, it hasn't. And that's still a work in progress. One of the things that a core tenet, just as I use coaching to build young people, but accountability is necessary for growth. And so while I'm not talking about Ike in particular, man, there's been plenty of players through my time at both BYU and Virginia that the accountability part ended up being the reason they ended up accelerating not only their career but their lives. And so it's just a principle I believe in, and painful sometimes for everyone, but necessary. But no more information on that at this time.
I think the question and answer was at your local media day, and it was about the money situation, and you gave, I think it was like a 6.5 minute answer, and it was it was classic Bronco Mendenhall style. I mean, you delved right into it, and right off the bat, we keep hearing, oh, no, this isn't pay for play. And you said that theory lasted about a week, and then that's what it devolved into. And you were one of the guys who was willing to say the truth that the rest of us have seen and observed. This is exactly what it is. You may not get a bonus if you score 10 touchdowns, but the premise was pay for play and has been. And now you've got the money and all that, and you are allowed to do it. How has that been able to be situated so quickly for you, for Utah State? Because it seems like in order to have the success as you go into the new conference, that is going to be a requirement.
Yeah, it is a requirement, and the nonsense and the kind of shenanigans of not ever saying it out loud. In fact, even NCAA rule was to say it wasn't pay for play, which was blatantly happening at every school intentionally, and certainly not maybe announced that it was money per touchdowns, but I can't say that didn't happen as well. And when I sat on the board of directors for the AFCA, we knew when it was proposed that the very first area to be targeted would be the recruiting, player assessment and selection and attraction, because that was the least enforced and least monitored and the weakest arm of the NCAA's governance anyway. And so knowing that and then add money to that, it was just so easy to see coming. And so anyway, the real challenge for any leader now, and you can play the game kind of at industry standard, or you can really try to create and differentiate in a way that your structure is designed. And most are doing that if they have the money just by giving more, right? And so there's the idea of the salary cap, which still hasn't addressed it because collectives will still function. And I'm not sure it's still sustainable or enforceable in the courts of law. So there's still lots of work to be done that way. But really, besides just giving more, if you don't have more to give, then how do you distribute in a way that builds a young person and actually unifies a team? And so, man, I love our structure. I think it's the most unique in college football. I don't really talk about it. But I feel I'm at peace in the landscape that we're in with how I'm doing it, how we're doing it. And if you were to ask our players that actually have earned the chance to receive any additional compensation, the number one thing they say is it's fair and it's on them. And that just is such a preparation for life that I would love to say life is fair. I think we would all at times think we've been treated, life has gone fair, and sometimes not. But at least to know that the outcome is predicated on and they have an influence on that is really a powerful principle. And so I'm working hard, again, to build young people, but unify the team and have them celebrate for each other when and if they do qualify. And that's it's one of the strengths of our program in the unique landscape. So we've just kind of twisted it in a way that works for us.
Well, as long as you're willing to talk about things that other coaches won't talk about, Bronco, how about this topic?
Do I need to sit down?
It'll be fine. But coaches really don't like to talk about this. But it's new, so I think it intrigues fans. On the one hand, your whole staff has to be focused on this first month and getting this team, these players to play the way you want so you can get the wins and get the results. But at the same time, you have to be recruiting the high school kids for the next group, right? And so you're building all these relationships, but you also have to have people who are watching video and scouting the current college players so that you're prepared for the transfer portal when it inevitably starts ripping teams apart in December. And from what I've been told by coaches, you're really watching the players that you built relationships with in high school, because to take a guy you have no relationship with is such a roll of the dice, because the personality stuff, the behavior in small groups and big groups really matters, and you don't know who you're getting. So how much of your staff is focused on that, and you have to just kind of set them apart from the team, because that's a full-time gig?
Yeah, it is. And if you have the staffing and you have the resources to do it, that is going on. And it's part of the existing process, much like the structure in the NFL. And again, as we think about where college football is going, and why we're not calling players employees, and there's all kinds of things that go with that, I am very well aware. But there's still different changes that are going to happen, I would say, within the next 3 years for sure, that will end up making this more NFL-like, if it isn't already. And in relation to the structure you're talking about, at Utah State, we don't have someone that's watching college games. While many do, we don't. We're focused more on the high school players. But that doesn't mean we're not aware. And I really don't ever want to take, and I'm talking about the transfer market specifically, I really don't ever want to take someone that's more than one step removed for our program. That means that one of my staff has recruited them, or that we've worked closely with someone else that has either coached them or recruited them, because of the risk you're talking about. The time frame is so short in the transfer market window, most default to just how they're playing. But, man, the wrong person in the wrong culture can really set your team back. And so we try to mitigate risk through known, and that is, again, the kids that we did recruit that maybe chose elsewhere. Or one of our colleagues that we knew really well that was on our staff that now is elsewhere that had possibly recruited them or coached them, but no, they'd have an interest in us. We try to eliminate the risk with knowns as much as possible, and it's a very unique balance. I intend to build this program predominantly through Utah high school players, but that doesn't mean that can be exclusively done, especially at the beginning, because we have to address roster needs as quickly as possible while we're building the foundational element to sustain us. That's going to be through some of the transfers, and transfers require the most money and has the most risk. So it's a really unique structure with a lot of things going at the same part. The amount of staff that you have and how you prioritize it's super important. But we're not doing what you just proposed, but many, if not all, are. And I'd love to say it's not necessary. Now, what they do with that is the next part in terms of, quite frankly, just being moral. And if you have scouted and you do know the rest of college football, how much they're reaching out while that kid is still playing with another team, therein becomes the moral integrity of a program, of a head coach, and of an institution, if they're tampering and at what level. And that really is the bigger issue, which as grown-ups we haven't seemed to manage yet appropriately in college athletics.
We had a basketball coach come on and say a friend of his at another school called and said, everybody's talking about your guy. I hate to do this, but I got to ask you about your guy. And he said, I don't know. It's college basketball. We're only 5 games into the season. Call me back in a month when I actually know. So that kind of tampering happens from the start. Those are two friends talking to each other. So
it's really interesting. And again, the money drives so much of it. And so a lot of times, even at the different levels, because there is different tiers of college football, right? At the FCS level, the group of 6 level, the A4 level, finances and money really are the primary determinant, not quality of play, as you've seen by North Dakota State and Montana State. And there's some really good programs at every level of college football. So money is the primary driver. But what people are looking at so early in the race in game 1 through game 5 of trying to assess what might fill their roster needs, a lot of times, man, for a player to jump levels, the starting offer is 5 times what they're making. It's not just double or triple. And it's similar for assistant coaches sometimes as well. And so the transitory market is just, it's really a challenge. And to what you're saying, it's really creating very unique professional communications or non-professional communications along the way in the race for talent, with not nearly enough guardrails, not nearly enough penalties, and not nearly enough of a strong enough framework and overall arching picture of how to manage it, which, by the way, the NFL has, and in college football is, you can just see, is kind of stuck in the middle right now and trying to transform itself as we go.
Bronco, we really appreciate the time and the perspective on all these issues in your team. Thanks for joining us, and good luck in the game.
Hey, thanks a lot. Good to talk to you guys.
Bronco Mendenhall, Utah State football coach, joining us right here on The Zone.
NFL, man, another guy bringing it up.
I think they're all doing it. Now, if it's the coach from a team you don't like, coach is irritating along the way, you can dismiss him as old and the game has passed you by. But when you start listening to stuff, they're talking, they're seeing the same stuff, they're talking in their groups, everybody isn't talking to everybody, but everybody's talking to a couple people, and they're seeing the same stuff, and it's going the same way. But I think Bronco's point about collectives is really interesting, because the NFL has a cap, and if college did that, right, if they declare them employees and they unionize and they negotiate, What college has that the pro doesn't is college has boosters who are motivated, who live outside the rules and outside. They're not the employer, they're not the employee, and they give you money. And in the NFL, that only happens if you're dealing with Peyton Manning and he's endorsing something. The endorsements are real. There isn't somebody motivated with the Seahawks or the Giants or the Bears or whoever to suddenly just start writing $1 million worth of checks because he wants the Bears to be better. That we don't see that happening.
Not that we know of.
Not that we know of. But I think we'd hear about it if it were happening on a widespread level. And I think it would happen if they did unionize. I think it would happen on a widespread level. And I think Bronco said the collectives aren't going away. And I think he's right.
How will they be managed is the issue.
Right. Yeah. And they can live outside the system. So, yeah.
I say get there already. We're going to get there. Get there.